So one of the biggest pain points when people come down to Medellin is the fact that they have to rent furnished. And usually they're renting through Airbnb. If they want to rent like a local, you have to have a local ID, some sort of local credit. And on top of that, you have to be able to prove income in Colombia somehow. On top of that, you have to be able to back your lease in form of actual property that you own. So a regular person that wants to rent an apartment, they don't have any property here. It's like, how am I going to rent an apartment here? Well, you need to have a co-signer that owns property or that can back you up and put a business against your lease in case you default. So it makes it very difficult even for Colombians to rent. It's a hassle. That's a huge pain point when people get here because they're paying inflated prices for these furnished apartments on Airbnb. And Airbnb is inflated not by 50% or 100%. It's like 200% more expensive going through Airbnb than actually going through the local route. But I'll give you my example. This apartment's a 3-bedroom apartment in El Poblado in Barrio Manila. 3-bedroom, 98 square meters, a shared bathroom, kitchen, and the living room. If you've seen some of my videos, you could kind of see the layout. If this apartment was on the market, they would probably raise the rent to about 600 max, 600 US dollars. So let's say 600 US dollars for this property if you were to get into a rental agreement right now, unfurnished, through a local rental agency. My same Airbnbs that are obviously completely gutted, brand new everything. If you see my video on my apartment where I gave my apartment tour, that's what they look like, $2,500. The lowest I go on that is $2,000 a month. That kind of gives you the perspective on how inflated it is. And it's because foreigners have no choice as to renting in Colombia. In all of Colombia, the statistic is that Colombians own 90% of all the real estate and 10% is owned by foreigners. So it's not like foreigners are taking advantage of it. It's us Colombians that have owned these properties, and now we have our frickin' day in the sun because there's a huge boom in tourism. So why not jack up the prices? There's no regulation, right? We make as much as possible because this might go away one day. One of the ways to get around that is by living here. If you're here for a year or two, you then start making friends where someone can co-sign for you, where you can start building some credit, where you know how to get a good deal on an apartment that's unfurnished and then how to furnish it, etc. And it could take you a year, it could take you 2 years. For me, it took me about 5 years where I had to roommate with people because I was broke. Obviously, I had been deported, I had no money, so I had to build myself up. But for someone that comes with money, it could take you even a year, 2 years to get into an unfurnished apartment, unless if you're going to be paying money in advance. The next solution is to pay a little bit more to those rental agencies that do cater to foreigners with just a passport and pay them 6 months in advance or a big deposit, but you're still paying more money than you should. That's the first pain point that we noticed when we were building the Medellin Masterclass for our first students that came aboard, because they were like, well, how am I going to live there? I don't want to spend thousands of dollars. So we helped them find those local deals and get around paying the gringo tax or the gringo prices. If you don't go through like a service like ours, then you have to live here and you just have to go through it yourself, just like I did and just like hundreds of other people, right? Another huge pain point for people when coming down here is buying property in Colombia. A lot of the people that come down here, they rent for a while, but their MO is to buy a property in Colombia. If you are not Colombian and you don't have a local ID and local credit, you're not gonna get a loan for a property here. Colombia has never really had a bubble because there is no financing in Colombia. The financing is so rigid. Banks will only finance 70% of the total purchase price. That means that your down payment is 30%. No matter what bank you go through, you're always only going to get 70% of the purchase value, and then you have to put down 30%. And most loans are 15-year loans. So there's really no bubble caused by free money like it did in the United States back in 2007, when anybody and their mother can get a loan just by farting on a contract and getting a loan for a $600,000 house at 4% down, right? That doesn't exist here in Colombia. So the market price doesn't get inflated. The problem for a foreigner is like, you have to come up with the money. You have to have the cash. The biggest workaround that I have found is that if you are Colombian and you're living in another country, there are banks here in Colombia that will work with your foreign credit, your US credit, to give you a loan for a property in Colombia. There are banks like Bancolombia, Davivienda, BBVA, etc., that have these programs for Colombians living abroad that will give them a loan based on their credit in that country. So that's one workaround, but you have to be Colombian. So if you're a foreigner, you just have to have the cash to be able to buy a property here. The good thing is you can get a really nice property between $50,000 to $150,000, depending on the area. If you want to live in a nice apartment in Belén, you can get one for $50,000, $60,000. If you want to live in a really nice apartment in El Poblado, you can spend up to $200,000, $300,000, depending on what penthouse and what building you're getting it at, right? $100,000 would buy you a pretty darn good apartment here in Colombia in a nice neighborhood. And the return on investment, if you furnish it or if you remodel it, let's say you put $30,000, $40,000 into it, is pretty high right now because, again, tourism is on a boom. There's a big demand for furnished apartments right now. Yeah, I'm going through it. This is my first experience with healthcare in Colombia. The healthcare system here, if you've got money, is amazing. It's better than the United States. A lot of people have told me that. Not only healthcare, for example, like personal medicine, I guess, but also dentists. It's way cheaper and the same quality, if not better at times. LASIK eye surgery, any cosmetic surgeries are pretty damn good here. Even like teeth whitening or Invisalign is cheaper here than in the United States. And on top of that, the level of care, I think, is higher because Colombians are social people and they're caring, they're empathetic. So, for example, the surgeon that did my surgery, I have him on WhatsApp. In the United States, when do you even actually have them on WhatsApp where you can message them and say, hey, my shit's red, what should I do? Well, the biggest health insurance company, at least here in Medellin, is Sura. I pay about $1,300 for the whole year. I'm 42 years old, never been sick, don't have any history. So I pay $1,300 a year for the top level, which is called Sura Global. They call it the global because it also gives you health insurance for when you travel outside of the country, because I do. So I wanted that. Just having that experience with that. I mean, literally, I go there. I have a card. I thought I had to show my card. I just give them my ID number. They're like, oh yeah, Mr. Messia. For example, today I went to do x-rays. First of all, the clinic that I went to was like walking distance. I went over there at 6 in the morning. They did the x-rays and I was out in 30 minutes. And I have the CD with the x-rays to go give to the surgeon. That's the level of care and also the service, and the facilities are great. Like where I got my surgery at, just like a hospital in any part of the United States. So they had to numb me. They hit the nerve under your armpit here. I'm sitting there and they're doing the surgery. I can't see it. They're playing reggaeton, vallenato, salsa in the surgery room. I thought that was hilarious. But anyway, that was my experience there. Healthcare in Colombia is cheaper than in the United States. On top of that, for example, if you need a nurse, super cheap. If you get taken on an ambulance, it's way cheaper than in the United States. For regular Colombians, that's expensive. $1,300 a year is very expensive when someone's making $500 a month or $1,000 a month even. Another big issue for a lot of people that you might not even know is an issue is taxes in Colombia. If you stay here 183 days, you are liable to report or file taxes here in Colombia, even if you're just a tourist. And their requirements are, just like in the United States, you've got to report global income. A lot of people either don't file because they don't know they have to file, or number two, they do it wrong. And that's a big thing that we've been going through with our students at the Medellin Masterclass, is to make sure that they're filing taxes the correct way. And also, Colombia, there is no double taxation. If you're paying taxes in the United States, you can show that to get credit, whatever you report here. The major point is that you should be working with an accountant or a tax attorney to do that if you are staying here over 183 days. As long as it's within a 365-day period, you are liable to report taxes. The downside is that it could screw with your visa application if you want to stay long-term. Get a long-term visa or a residency or even citizenship at some point. You're going to have to face the music some point if you really want to stay in Colombia long-term. So you definitely want to go through a professional like the lawyers at Nexo Legal, or any competent accountant or lawyer can help you with that. But yeah, it's a big pain point for some people because some people have not registered and then they go do their visa, or they need to do taxes, but they realize that, oh shoot, I should have reported before and now I have to do all that again, and it could be a big hassle for people. Those are the 4 major pain points. And again, to reiterate, you can work around this all yourself. I did it myself when I first got here. It took me 13 years now to understand the system. It took me that long because I didn't have enough money to invest in Colombia or buy property, start businesses, and do all this stuff that I'm doing now. But if you do have that and you are coming to Colombia, you could figure that all out yourself. You can live your life here for a year, 2 years, hire people to do it for you, and you can figure it out. It's complicated, but if you have help, you can do it. And if you speak Spanish. If you don't, if you want to work around, go to the MedellinMasterclass.com and we can help you figure that out. You could take the course yourself. It's a lifetime course. If you're not moving to Colombia or Medellin anytime soon, you will always have access to it. The biggest takeaway, I think, is that we have all of our contacts, our resources. It's 100+ resources that I have under, including my personal resources, like my personal accountant, Gabby. She's on the spreadsheet. Her contact information is there. My attorney that deals with all my properties, you can contact him. My driver, like I said, Oscar, he's part of the driver's spreadsheet where we have 20 different drivers, but I put mine first in case you want to contact the people that I work with. The second biggest takeaway is the fact that now you have a community. When you come here to Colombia, you're not by yourself. We do stuff and we share knowledge and hopefully grow together. I will see you here when you're in Medellin, or I'll see you next Friday. I'm gonna be live every Friday with a different topic, spreading the knowledge, spreading the love, spreading and sharing my beautiful life and this beautiful city with you. Thank you guys so much for being here. I will see you guys next week. Remember to go to the MedellinMasterclass.com